So, with COVID-19 infections, sleep has become a major issue. People while on isolation, once positive for RT-PCR or antigen test, sleeping may become an issue because isolation is not a common scenario. Plus, we all know that with COVID infection, insomnia can set in. And in fact, it is one of the symptoms of the so-called long COVID syndrome. We all know that even without COVID-19, the pandemic has already brought a lot of anxiety and uncertainty. And as a result, more and more adults are therefore taking some over-the-counter melatonin to get some sleep. So the question is melatonin as a sleeping aid safe and useful to take? Please watch this. We all know that melatonin is a hormone that your brain produces in response to darkness. It helps with the timing of your circadian rhythm, that is your 24-hour internal clock, and with sleep. So being exposed to light at night can really block melatonin from being produced. The problem is we have melatonin marketed in supermarkets and in grocery stores as dietary supplements, and these are usually made from animals or microorganisms, but most often they're made synthetically. Despite inconclusive evidence about its use for insomnia, we know that we have published data on its possible safety and its possible benefit in terms of insomnia. One recently published data, the study published last week in the medical Journal of the American Medical Association, found that more and more people in the study population were actually taking more than twice the amount of melatonin they took decades before. In fact, I've seen it in my own practice, and that under the pandemic's negative impact on sleep may have further increased the widespread reliance on sleeping aids. Considering that it is over the counter, people are just shopping for sleep aids in malls and grocery stores. We know that majority of patients who got infected with COVID, even if asymptomatic, eventually can develop long COVID syndrome, of which long-term outcomes are still being studied. But what we know is that almost always, a complaint of most patients after COVID-19 infection, which is part of the symptoms of the long COVID syndrome, is insomnia or lack of good sleep. And as part of the COVID regimen, in fact, when patients suffer from it, most physicians prescribe melatonin. But we have to be very careful with this regimen, as data have shown that taking melatonin as sleep aids, especially long-term, has been linked in prospective studies with the development of side effects, including dementia and early mortality. In fact, we have data to support that melatonin use has been linked to headache, dizziness, nausea, some stomach cramps, drowsiness, confusion, or disorientation, to the point that patients become irritable with mild anxiety, depression, as well as abnormally low blood pressure. Patients also have to be extra careful, as it can also interact with common medications and can trigger allergies. So in my own private practice, especially among my patients who suffer from chronic diseases like diabetes, I usually recommend its use, but for short-term goals, as data for short-term use, like for jet lag, shift workers, and people who have trouble falling asleep, appears to be safe. And up to now, however, long-term safety on the use of melatonin remains unknown. My advice, therefore, is that it is best that we avoid taking amounts of melatonin that far exceed the 5 milligram a day dosage that is typically used as a short-term treatment. The problem is, since melatonin is being sold as supplement and therefore of no approved therapeutic claim, they are sold in stores that may contain differing levels of melatonin, and they may contain levels that are higher than what is really advertised on the label. No federal requirements that companies must test these pills to be sure if they contain the exact regulated amount of advertised melatonin. Studies, in fact, have shown that melatonin content in some of these unregulated commercially available melatonin supplements range from approximately minus 83% to plus 478% of what is present in the labels. And since they are sold in supplements, they're therefore not being regulated and no requirements that these companies should provide what are some of the hidden additives in those melatonin supplements, which in some cases may be harmful. It is therefore not surprising that studies have also found that 26% of melatonin supplements do contain certain elements not written on the product label, and that includes serotonin, which is a hormone that can have harmful effects at even relatively low levels. So the problem with taking too much serotonin, because is present in the melatonin supplement that you're taking, if you combine this with medications such as antidepressants, migraine medications, it can lead to serious drug interaction. Mild symptoms include shivering and diarrhea, while more severe reaction can lead to muscle rigidity, fever, seizures, and even death if not treated. Remember, for those who have been taking melatonin, melatonin is not a herbal supplement or a vitamin. When we talk about melatonin, it's a hormone made by the pineal gland located deep in the brain and released into the bloodstream to regulate body's sleep cycles. And therefore, the usual view that it's natural and therefore it can't hurt as a supplement is totally wrong. And in reality, we just really don't know the implications of melatonin, especially if you've been taking this supplement long term. So if you have to take melatonin short term for occasional bouts of insomnia, especially during stress, then take it correctly. Take melatonin in inducing sleep at least 2 hours before bed. It can have an effect in inducing sleep, but studies have shown that its effect is really minimal. It decreased the amount of time it took patients to fall asleep by approximately 8 to 10 minutes. So my simple tip and advice to you for those who have been having problems with sleep, especially after COVID or during COVID isolation, is that if you are one who takes hours to fall asleep, probably the better thing to do is to turn off your screens or get 20 to 40 minutes of exercise each day, and don't drink any caffeinated products, specifically near your sleeping time. Research has found that the body will slow or stop melatonin production if you are exposed to light, including the blue light from your smartphones, laptops, and the like. And this includes the LED spectrum light source or any LED spectrum light source. So try not to use these devices at least an hour before you want to fall asleep. Now, for me, I always make sure that I read my favorite book for the week to sleep. I just read few pages in a dim light from a real book, as I really don't like ebooks at all, as again, digital light can suppress the circadian drive. So while reading my book, I make sure to keep my bedroom temperature at a cooler and comfortable temperatures at around 20 to 20 degrees Celsius. So if your doctor does prescribe melatonin to help you sleep while you have COVID, or even as a way to aid you in sleeping post-COVID, and you also suffer from minor sleep issues, make sure you use melatonin only for a short period of time for a few days up to few weeks. I also invite you to check my other video that I published several months ago on tips on how to have a better sleep. I hope this video helps, especially for those who have problems with sleeping and are taking melatonin. Please make sure that you are taking safe medications or supplements before taking them long term. Again, this is Dr. Jayatan. See you again soon.